This week on Dig Me Out. With your hosts, Jason Ziak and Tim Minichi.
Jay, we're back again with another episode thanks to our Dig Me Out Union on Patreon. Join the union to vote on albums, pick one to discuss with us on the show, get access to bonus episodes, and our private Discord community. Keep the podcast ad-free and make the next episode happen by joining us at digmeoutpodcast.com. All right, Jay, we're back this week with one of our patrons. You know him well. I know him well.
There he is. I'm looking at him.
We're looking at him. We're actually looking at him wearing a Royal Crescent Mob t-shirt, something that is known to only probably 3 podcast listeners and 50 more people beyond that. Welcome back, Patrick Testa. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm awesome. How are you guys?
Good. So let's see.
Thanks for having me.
What was your pick last year?
I had Sinead O'Connor.
That was right.
Year.
We did Sinead, and then was it Government Mule the year before that?
No.
Or was it 2 years before?
No, we didn't do Government
Not Government Mule. Widespread Panic.
We did Widespread Panic.
Sorry.
Yeah. We did, let's see, we did Hamel on Trial. We did
That's right.
James. We did
Tool,
which, yeah, that was a little bit, I do want to say something about Widespread Panic, though. I totally screwed up on that one. Because, and maybe this is a lesson for those people out there that want to suggest an album. I had learned about Widespread Panic on the 1992 album, but really the first one I bought was 94. What I chose was I kind of listened to all the records, and I was kind of it's Ain't Life Grand. And I listened to all the albums, and I'm like, which one should I pick? And I really tried to get into the heads of you two guys. And I thought,
don't do that.
Well, Jay's gonna like the guitar riff. Some of the, DMO people are gonna like this, and instead, I should have gone with what I learned about the band on. And so I screwed up and picked the wrong record. So you guys might get a gift one day in the mail that's of Ain't Life Grand from Widespread Panic, because that's the one that turned me on to them.
Well, first of all, you can't make a wrong pick. I mean, they're your picks, and they're all valuable. Second of all, do not ever attempt to get into our heads. They are dark, dusty places full of fractured 80s metal lyrics and way too much NFL draft coverage.
And I learned a couple months ago, the topic of Baby Jessica was brought up, and my brain just like opened up. Was like, I haven't thought about Baby Jessica in 35 years. And it was like suddenly opened up this door I didn't even know was there. And I was like, I remember the whole thing.
Was Baby Jessica the Well?
Yeah.
Oh God.
It's one of those things that was like beaten in my head, and probably all of ours.
News coverage
and then you just locked it away. It took up some space in your brain, and then one day somebody shook you and it came out and you're like, whoa, where'd that come from?
Thanks for that. Thanks. Well, I don't have a clean way to segue into this. Speaking of shaking things, let's get into some drill and bass with your pick.
Well, you're probably wondering why my eyes are a little bit closed right now, and wasn't expecting this, but my boss's birthday was today, and so he had, it's his 60th, so it was a special day. So he's like, we are all going to a happy hour, and I'm like, I've literally done 2 happy hours in my entire life, so this was a new thing for me. And then, one drink led to another. And then there was like, we got to toast, the Blue Jackets won 8-4 last night, whatever. So I'm several beers deep at this point. So I'm going to kind of wing this. I kind of forgot everything I wanted to talk about tonight, except for the band. I mean, the CD. But I'm just at one point I'm like, you know what? I might as well just keep going. So I'm gonna.
You're in for a penny, in for a pound. At this point, it's a sunk cost. So just keep
So
moving forward, and
we'll see how it goes. You guys hold on for it. If I start
this,
picking my nose or something, let me know, and I'll.
as I wipe my nose, we'll definitely be aware of all that. So, what's your
So
pick?
back to a little bit of back to the widespread panic thing. Since I picked the wrong thing because I was trying to think about you guys, I even put it on Discogs that I was going through. Oh my gosh, what are they gonna think about this record? It's got no guitars, it's got no lyrics, it's got no vocals, it's drums all over the place. But it does have a bass, and the bass is really cool. And I said, I don't know if this is gonna be good. But then eventually, I'm like, let's just challenge the hosts of this show, and we'll challenge the listeners to see what comes out of it, because this record I think is really something spectacular, but it's completely not the norm. And it's the record I chose was Squarepusher, and if you or Squarepusher Hard Normal Daddy, which came out in 1997. And if you Google drum and bass or drill and bass and origins and greatest albums, you probably will find the picture that's behind Tim's head right now as one of the landmark records. But still, I would think that most people probably don't even know what Squarepusher is, whether it's a band, whether it's not related to music or at all. I just don't think he's much of a household name. But out of Great Britain, Squarepusher, Hard Normal Daddy, 1997.
Don't Google Hard Normal Daddy by itself, because the search results will be not what you're expecting.
Not
But yeah,
safe for work.
I don't know about you, Jay, but I was familiar with Squarepusher in the sense that I knew the name, and I think I had sampled some music over the years. How about you?
I knew the name. I had never heard the music. I'm not even sure I knew exactly know what drum and bass is.
Well,
You know,
Jay,
well,
I'd
this
be
isn't
happy to
exactly
educate me.
drum bass either.
it's not, yeah. So this is actually classified more as drill and bass,
Okay.
which is a subset of drum and bass. We'll get into that a little bit. I'm not an expert in this field. My sort of knowledge really begins and ends with two bands, Aphex Twin and Ronnie Size. I loved New Forms, the Ronnie Size Represent album that came out. I think it was like '97. I don't know. It just connected with me in a weird way because I'm not really into drum and bass. And then Aphex Twin was just all over the place. The videos were kind of on MTV at weird times, so I definitely caught the Twin videos. And then in the 2000s, I started getting into like Autechre and some other weird electronic music that this sort of crosses into a little bit. So I was sort of familiar with this, but drill and bass is, like I said, it's like a subgenre um, where they add essentially faster tempos, which incorporate jungle and breakbeat music. Jungle being a form of electronic music connected to the Jamaican sound systems, and then it was just basically creating these sample collages using these crazy breakbeats. And then with regards to Squarepusher, you're talking about some like jazz fusion being sampled in there. So that's where you get his end of it. And there's been bands that have followed along afterwards, like in the 2000s. Amon Tobin and Animals on Wheels and a couple other ones that I looked up. But that's basically what drill and bass is in comparison to drum and bass. Drum and bass is, does it go under, is it his own genre, or does it like fall under techno? Patrick, do you know?
Drum and bass is a form of electronic music. I mean,
Okay.
techno was the name for electronic music before a lot of experts tried to really create more genres to describe the differences between all these acts. But drum and bass really came out of jungle. Jungle was kind of the term before drum and bass even was being talked about, and like you said, had a little bit more of a influence from dance hall and Jamaican music, but the drum beats were all break beats, just like a lot of hip hop that was coming out from the late 80s, early 90s, but they were taking, they kind of went, what, maybe if we strip this down even further and like make it all about the drum and the bass, then we'll create something different. So that's kind of where obviously the name came from, drum and bass. But then it was a matter of like manipulating the drums and manipulating the bass to see how far you can take it in one direction and another direction and all over the place. But like Squarepusher, and I don't, maybe more. I haven't really delved into like how much of the sound that you're hearing is an actual sample, because he's a bass player, and a lot of it is played by him. So I don't know if the keyboards, a lot of the keyboards and stuff that he plays in there are played by him too. So I don't know how much is the sample. Maybe more than that. You could talk more about that. But drill and bass, and just to kind of touch on a little bit what you were saying, drill and bass was, you hear it specifically in this record, but also Aphex Twin is really kind of where you hear this is what drill and bass really is about. It's a little bit in here, like when you hear the drums just go that kind of a thing, it sounds like a drill. I think that's literally what they were saying. It's like, oh, the drums went so fast that it's not just somebody playing the drums anymore. It sounds like a tool of some sort, so a drill. So when you hear those little, that's the indication. Like when it's, then you'll know that the music ends up being classified as drill and bass. But I think, in my opinion, Squarepusher is so much more about what's inside the music than it is the genre that the drums and the bass are playing. But everybody else can be the judge of that as well. But yeah, electronica music came out of techno. Techno was the general term. Then electronica, I don't remember hearing electronica until 1997, right around this time. As a matter of fact, you mentioned Ronnie Size in 1997. A lot of the great records and a lot of the different genres that are being talked about as historic electronic music are all coming out at this time, 96, 97, 98, but specifically 97, I think, is when you'll see a ton of records. I even have a few samples back here that if I remember to break them out, I'll show them to you, of how big 1997 was for this and other styles of electronic music.
So to answer your question, this has a mixture. There's drum programming, there's live instruments, and then there's some sampling. There's also signal processing, like taking something and then completely changing the sound of it through processing the signal. It's all just credited to Tom Jenkinson, who is Squarepusher. It's the same thing with Aphex Twin. It's just one person. So, but it doesn't break down like this is a sample, this is what he played. So you'd have, I'm guessing a lot of the drum stuff is probably programmed, and there's some there are like some acoustic bass sounds and things like that, and some keyboards. So some of those might be played, and then some of them might be samples that are manipulated to the point where I don't think there's anything credited. Like this is from a James Brown song, or this is from, Kraftwerk or something like that. It's all manipulated, which, I mean, Trent Reznor does that too, where he like takes something, like there's a sample of a Bee Gees song in Closer, which you don't know that until you like untwist whatever he messed up with the sample. Right. But just a little history
of the band.
So as I mentioned, it's Tom Jenkinson is the man behind Squarepusher. He's born in 1975. He's from Chelmsford, Essex, England, and he recorded his first music when he was pretty young. Like when he was 12 years old, he was starting to play music in a band, and started getting into early acid and techno and stuff like that at the end of the 80s and the beginning of the 90s. He put out a 12-inch with a friend of his. It didn't really do anything in the early 90s, and then he started recording under Squarepusher, and that's what got him, his live sets were what got him noticed by what was the label? Is it Nothing? Was it
No,
no,
he
not
was
Nothing.
originally he was
Reflex.
originally Reflex was Aphex Twin's label.
Right. Because he was later on Nothing. Because first he was
on
on
Warp, but really he made a name on Warp. In fact, he made Warp kind of famous when he signed with them with his releases.
Right, because this is the second album. It's the first one on Warp, and it charted in the UK at 115. It didn't chart in the US, but it did chart over in the UK on their regular chart, not like their dance chart or anything. It was just their record chart. He actually put out a record last year in March called Dostro Time. It's the 16th studio album by Squarepusher, and the album titles are weird. Like it looks like they're written by someone who is not a native English speaker, because it's like Feed Me Weird Things, Hard Normal Daddy, Music is Rotted One Note, Selection 16, Go, Do You Know Squarepusher, Hello Everything, Be Up a Hello. Be Up a Hello. What?
Sounds like a random word generator.
Yeah. And then there's a ton of EPs for and 12-inch singles and all sorts of stuff. But continuing to put out music, and in fact, just last year, like I said, had an album out. So
I think he's got a single out this month, actually.
Oh, well, perfect.
I did listen. Yeah, I just did listen to it, but it was very modern. Like he was going for something more in the garage style or dubstep-ish,
Oh, interesting.
But
Okay.
but mixed, but his still, drum and bass is kind of back. So obviously I think it's kind of a good time for him to do that kind of stuff. So it's got his signature stuff in it, but then it's kind of an amalgamation of him and what has happened over the last 10, 15 years.
Back, baby. Let's get to the comments over at Patreon. Michael Jin said, offensively good bass player. Well, that might be
some people are offended.
Going on. Yeah. Jeff Gentis said, if we're going off the beaten path and just getting lost in the woods, I'd rather listen to Tokyo Anal Dynamite. So that's the standard bearer of I'd rather listen to, I guess. Like, if you want to go to an extreme, it's Tokyo Anal Dynamite. Gavin said, congrats on the left field suggestion. I had a spin, and it's not really in my wheelhouse, but I can hear why others would enjoy it. I've gone with EP, although I don't really feel qualified, but I'm glad I've heard it. Gavin, that is might have been one of the nicest comments. It's not really in my wheelhouse, but I can hear why others would enjoy it. Like, that's how everybody should respond to music that isn't made by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And Ian McIver, guys, this is a landmark right here.
Oh,
I'm not sure how I missed this back in 1997. Probably didn't get as big a promotion compared to some other groups, and the release time would have been just after I returned home from university, where my music selection became more limited. I enjoyed this album. The experimental and jazzy side of the album works well with the electronics and gives a bit more depth than a simple drum and bass album. It does suffer from late 90s 1 hour CD runtime, and some edits would tighten it up a bit, but give Patrick the gold star. First authentic worthy album vote for me in 2025.
Wow. Woo! Patrick.
Rock and roll.
Honestly, Patrick, I would just quit here and call to win. Just call to win here. We don't need to press your luck. You don't need to double down.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great time.
Sign on to Patreon, support DMLUnion.com.
You have placated the toughest critic around, so well, good job. Actually, the toughest critic is right Ian. There. I'm looking at him. His name is Jason Ziak. Jay, tell me one thing you liked. One thing you liked about Hard Normal Daddy. That's such a weird phrase to say. By Squarepusher.
Well, when I go into this genre, the big sort of bucket, I'm concerned that it's either going to be repetitive or non-melodic. That's sort of my bias against electronic music. It's definitely not repetitive. It's quite the opposite, which was a surprise for me, that I enjoyed digging into how they were able to create he's able to create a spontaneous, almost performance feel, very much performance feel on this record. You don't know what's going to happen from one section to the next. It's just constant change and evolution and twists and turns. It's from a drum and chord standpoint, it is very jazzy. That was another thing I did not expect and was pleasantly surprised by. So both in, straight up, jazz drumming that is affected or programming that is jazz-like, to, and that's, Beep Street is a good example. I mean, these are just straight up jazz drums. Papalon shows sort of the piano playing, keyboard playing, a lot of electric kind of roadsy sounds on this album. Very jazz oriented in terms of the chord choices and the way that it's played. So again, not really expecting that. There's even some horns, the hints of them on that song. Mm-hmm. Gets almost a little, loungy. And then it also approaches, because it's so unpredictable, like a proggy space, which I didn't expect. A song like E8 Boogie has some runs in it that are very prog-like. Some bass and drum runs on that. It almost gets to like jam adjacent. It's so like unpredictable and loose, which is strange to me. The cognitive dissonance around expecting electronic music to be very programmed and predictable, and this not being that. So I think that, in general, that works for me. This innovative combination of using electronic instruments or production, but juxtaposing that with music that it's highly unpredictable and performance oriented is really novel. I don't know that I've ever really heard anything quite like this before. I thought that was really interesting to listen to. So that's what worked for me. How about you, Tim?
Well, as I mentioned, I was sort of familiar with them tangentially through that drum and bass scene that I had learned about back in the 90s. So this wasn't as big a shock in the sound, but like you, I was shocked at how well he keeps the songs moving in ways that keep you interested. And not overly relying on repetition and these loops of areas that where you sometimes it feels like you get a build up and then it like builds, drops, and then you just build right back up again. It kind of has this wave effect. Whereas you listen to these sounds and these songs, and they're all over the place in terms of it was weird. It was like some of these songs sounded like weird Herbie Hancock songs, and then other ones sound, if you take like the drums out of some of the songs, the actual music sounds like it would be for like a police movie in this like 1970s.
Yeah.
Like, it was such interesting choices for what instruments he played and sampled, whether it was like electronic piano like you mentioned. There's like some horn stuff happening at the end of Papalon. It's just crazy. It's crazy because it sounds like a computer's playing it, but then you hear like there's the it sounds like an upright bass in E8 Boogie, the track 7, and I'm like, that could be Larry Graham. Like, that could be Bootsy Collins, maybe if on speed, but like that bass playing is not far off from like those great funk players of the 70s, or guys who were playing like fretless bass in jazz fusion bands like the Weather Report, like stuff like that. Like, it's just kind of unexpected at how this crosses clearly into electronic music, but then also retains so much of what we think of in terms of organic, jazz, funks. I don't even know what to call it, like what Herbie Hancock does. I guess it's kind of fusion funk, fusion jazz. He's all over the place. But yeah, that was what worked for me. It was just like how unexpected the arrangements and the songwriting was, because I didn't expect there to be songwriting, to be honest. I expected there to be tracks of loops and not necessarily a kind of world created on this record. So Patrick, you brought this record to us. What works for you on it?
Yeah, well, so I mentioned this on Patreon, and I'd like to mention it here too, that what I think is so great about this record is how much better it is than the last record that he did. And I'm going to say Feed Me Weird Things is a wonderful record as well. So when I first, and I don't remember which one I actually got into first, as soon as I kind of got into, I was a DJ in the 90s, and so I was familiar with all these electronic sounds that worked in clubs and hip hop, and I did love, and I DJ'd a few raves and all kinds of stuff. So I had all these different sounds that I've been familiar with. And then when I was on the radio starting in 95, I started getting fed Feed Me Weird Things, fed music by labels and promoters and things like that, of stuff, and I just consumed it like daily. I mean, I literally would go through 10-12 albums a day, every single day of my life for 6 years. So when I came across this, and I'm gonna say it was probably 97, this might have been the first record I heard by him, I immediately found as much as I could find, which was some EPs, the previous record, Feed Me Weird Things. But I would say that Feed Me Weird Things, if anybody's even remotely cool about hearing what they just heard, if they listen to this record, I suggest going to Feed Me Weird Things, listen to that, and try to digest that, because it really kind of paints a picture. And a lot of people seem to be familiar with Aphex Twin in one way or another, because he was a brand name, and he did a lot of amazing things for the genre, and was an outsider for in a lot of ways as well. So it was kind of very appealing. Um, but he really challenged the listener when he put records out. He was making it kind of hard to listen to, and that's a good thing for people like me that like to explore different things. But when I first heard Squarepusher, he was kind of like, you know what, I'm gonna put more of me into this instead of making about the limitations that you have on your ears. And so I felt like there was a little bit more to connect with his organic bass and other rhythms and stuff like that. And when this first record, or the first song, so what I was getting at was that first record, you'll be like, holy smokes, how can somebody do so much with drum and bass and be kind of diverse still and have this whole record that kind of works together? Until you hear this record, then he takes it another level to where it's even more diverse and more more storytelling, more takes you in more directions than the last one did. So that's what blows me away about Hard Normal Daddy. And so that first song, you mentioned it already, but it has a cinematic quality to it right out of the gate. Plus the bass line on Cooper's World totally reminds me of Shaft. Like you said, a cop movie or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it has that 70s feel. It's vintage, but it also has like a cool feeling to it, and it's rounded off. It's very smooth. So it has a whole different sound than Shaft did. Shaft just puts you in that kind of classic feeling. And then even like Chick Corea, you guys have mentioned, well, you mentioned Weather Report and other bands of that era, but Chick Corea comes to mind when you listen to that as well. But going down through the lines, I think you guys both mentioned two of my favorite songs, Papalon and E8 Boogie. I think Papalon, I don't know if there are programmed drums on that. I think that's live drums. I mean, I may be wrong. There might be some mixed in there. But it has a classic jazz drum feeling. Even if there's some programming in there, it feels live all the way through. E8 Boogie, also live drums, but you can definitely hear like some programmed hand percussion, some bongos and things like that to kind of give it a different feel. And like you said, at the end of the song kind of builds up a little bit more and has some more sounds to it. So those two are probably the centerpiece of the album, which land right smack dab in the middle of the record, are probably my favorite songs as well. Another one of my favorites, which I'm going to save for when you guys talk about what didn't work, is the last track on the CD. So I'll save it for that. But that is still one of my favorite songs, and we'll talk about that when you get to that. Well, yeah, that's kind of what I got through this. But coming from a DJ perspective, it was a breath of fresh air, because it's like, this is something that I can listen to for myself rather than see how people react to it on the dance floor. When you try to play experimental stuff in the mix of stuff that gets people's booties moving, uh, you definitely always have a couple of people that appreciate that, and they look up to the DJ and they point, or they'll come up later in the night and say, "Oh my God, that was cool that you played that." Never get to hear that kind of stuff. But it didn't, it doesn't make you necessarily want to dance, even though it's created in the way that dance music is normally created. But so for me, coming into that and being able to get on the radio and kind of express this style of music or this genre of music in a completely different way that might excite people as they're driving or as they're sitting at home or whatever, instead of on the dance floor, was pretty groundbreaking for me. And that year in particular was kind of spectacular with all the other stuff that came out around this album in 1997.
Yeah, it's the thing I wanted to compare it to that really like stood out to me was a lot of the bass stuff sounds like this is the same year as Ronnie Size, and you get a lot of that like bass acoustic upright bass sound, but it's not like plucking, it's like a lot of like smooth runs of notes and a little more finesse, and this is a little bit more on the manic end of things when it comes to some of the bass playing. So I thought it was an interesting comparison that they're essentially drawing from the same sort of sounds, but just choosing different parts of them to either sample or play like. And I can understand, the Ronnie Size had some vocals on some of the songs, like Brown Paper Bag had the vocal version, so it made a good single. And I can understand why this would maybe fall behind that in Aphex Twin in terms of this being all instrumental. So you're not getting, there's no vocal hook for the radio or even a experimental show on MTV or college radio. It's probably going to go with those singles before, because I remember playing Brown Paper Bag on our college radio station. It was in regular rotation, but nothing from Squarepusher. I didn't learn about Squarepusher until years later, and I don't think we ever had anything in the studio by them. So, Jay, what doesn't work for you?
It's a lot of information. It's a lot of material. We're talking an hour, 3 minutes. These songs are 8 minutes, 8 minutes, 8 minutes, 6 minutes. A lot of it is just drums. I have a hard time. It's interesting hearing you guys talk about the bass so much. I really had a hard time even understanding or hearing the bass on this record. There's just so much drums, and they're so in your face. I think the songs I ended up liking the most, the drums are a little pulled back. They're a little toned down, like either mix wise or just performance wise. And I could hear more what was going on with the bass, but a lot of the stuff on here, I don't know that I even hear bass. And it's often whatever the bass is doing is not really what the drums are doing. They're doing different things a lot of the time. So I was really kind of hungry for them to drop into some groove sections where things would lock up and there'd be less of like, the high end pitter patter of the drums and then like bass kind of meandering, doing its own thing. And like I want more sections where they come together. I think it happens on Fat Controller for a little bit there at the beginning of that song. and that felt like, oh, okay, this is more of this would be nice for the two to come together and then break apart. It would help me, I think, stay grounded a little bit in finding the themes, giving my brain a rest, absorbing all of this data. So I think that's the biggest thing that I struggle with, which I didn't expect. Honestly, like I said, coming into this, I almost expected to be a little bored sometimes with electronic music, and this is certainly not that. So it's quite the opposite. The other thing I'll say is, some of the tones they're so light. It reminded me of like video game music, like the soundtrack for Gran Turismo or something. Like when you're picking your car out and then and then there's some chase stuff on here that you could almost imagine like driving to. So it kind of gave me those kind of vibes, and not that there's some nostalgia to that was kind of nice, but also it'd be nice to hear some tones on here that, other than the drums, I guess, is where the aggression comes in. Maybe some other tones here, some bass lines and things that would be a little bit grittier, or some keyboard
maybe
sounds.
On Fat, you brought up Fat Controller. On that one, there is kind of like a distortion. Like there's very little distortion on this whole record. I mean, maybe you guys have a better sense on that on the bass,
sure.
but on that one has a little bit of distortion. And kind of that one in particular kind of harkens back to the label head Aphex Twin a little bit, because Aphex Twin does so much of that.
Also reminded me of more electronica, like Chemical Brothers and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. But the distortion wasn't on the drums. The drums were still clear as ice. It was this other percussive sound, and there were kind of explosions. They were kind of like explosions, that kind of stuff.
Right.
It was more distorted. But yeah, I think that was, when you brought up that song, I think that was the one that really kind of sounds a little bit different to me, as far as that those different sounds go.
So what didn't work for you, Tim?
Well, very little, to be honest, because I thoroughly enjoyed this. I would just put it on and I hit my repeat, repeat album button, and I would just have it on like all day and then walk in and walk out. The problem is I had a hard time like kind of remembering which song was which without like looking at the track list. I couldn't go like, oh yeah, that's that song with that thing. Like it, and obviously the song titles have nothing to do with there's no hook for you remember the name of the song. You have to entirely remember it based on reading it. I think that like with you, the trouble I have with drill and bass is the lack of cohesion between the bass and the drums. Like I'm so conditioned to want the drums and the bass to work together, and they are like it's like two guitars are playing off of each other rather than the drum and the bass working together. Like the drums are typically 30-second note hi-hats and stuff, which is why I mentioned like Fat Controller actually brings the tempo down a little bit, and you get almost a groove with that song. So I prefer listening to this music in short bursts because of the songs being so, like you said, filled with notes that like it becomes overwhelming. So a 60-minute album is a hard sell on this. If I was listening to this and it was a 2-minute vinyl record, probably would work a lot better. But this is a lot to ask. I mean, there's probably more kick, snare, and hi-hat hits in this 60 minutes than like all of Guided by Voices ever.
Catalog.
Their whole catalog doesn't have this many
of 300 albums.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to ask ChatGPT how many kick drum hits there are on this record, because it's insane.
I did notice as a passive listen, it was very different than when I actively tuned in and then took notes against it. as a passive listen, it was more like came in and out. My brain could kind of shut off some of the information, I think. And then,
Yep.
but when I found myself like, okay, I'm going to sit down for an hour and really focus on this record and do notes, it was like, wow, like this is a lot. This is work.
Right. And that's where
The challenge is here.
and that's
Like,
when you start to pick
brain
up on
processing so much. What
Right.
do I make? What is going on there? What do I even say about that? You know, just
exactly. And then you hit pick up on the little things that bother you, like in Chin Happy, there is like this electric voice happening, like manipulated, that just takes me out of the song immediately. I'm like, what in the hell is this? I don't need that. I don't mind the scratches. I know that's dated, but I don't mind them as compared to this weird robot voice that's showing up in this song. Luckily, it's only a 3-minute song, so it's over pretty quickly, and it's only really in like kind of the back half of the song. But that song rubbed me the wrong way, just in general.
It's a very abrasive song.
Yeah, that's to me where this lost me, was just on purposely abrasive stuff. I'm not looking to go to listen to music because I want it to feel like I'm running my finger across sandpaper. Like I genuinely want to enjoy it.
Well,
so
that's
if it's hurting me, I'm not a sadist.
Romance the man.
Yeah,
he's setting you up though, because Papalon is the next song.
I get it.
He's going. Okay, if these people have gotten this far, I'm gonna like push it. And it's almost all drums, that song, right? It's like almost like 90 something percent drums, it feels like. But yeah, then Papillon comes on, and you're like, oh, wow,
right.
This is a beautiful world. It's like the doors open and the sunshine comes out.
Well, now you had mentioned Rebus, which is the closing track. Did you expect us to like take a dump on that song? Because that's actually a nice palate cleanser. If it had come in the middle of the album, it's only 2:48. It actually would have made sense to put that like track 6 or something like that. I like that dub reggae-ish bass and stuff, and that totally works for me.
I'll tell you how I interpret that song, and the only reason I would say it would be on the what doesn't work side of the conversation is that it doesn't really. I don't think it necessarily fits with the rest of the record. Maybe because where it is. Maybe because it is
probably.
But Cooper's World, going back to what Jay said, he was itching for some sort of funk groove or something that if they would have dropped that in the middle of the record or towards the end of the record, maybe that's where you would have felt that or that scratch itched or itch scratched. Itchy scratchy. But Rebus, I think just and when it comes after track 11, which I can't remember the title of that one, but that's the P's and Q's, isn't it?
Rat / P's and Q's, yes.
Yeah. It just feels like he kind of completed the record, and then here's like a coda kind of a thing. But I think that's exactly what it really is, because his output, if you take it as a bigger swath than just a record, he changes styles and he introduces different things on every new record. And in fact, the next full album is called Music is the Rotted One Note, which is truly not electronic. It's all live jazz. drum and bass, whatever, but it's all live instrumentation. I believe there's scratching and there is some things that fall into there, but the music itself is all live. So the next EP that comes out, which was what was it called? I can't even read it because of all the beers. But it's kind of like a segue to the next album because it doesn't have the same feel as Hard Normal Daddy, in my opinion. But I do, like I said, I think it's one of my favorite songs on the album, and it really works as a single in the mix of another playlist or something like that. If you drop that into something else, I think it works as by itself. But talking about long albums, but fantastic records that came out in this year. I got a lot of them here that I didn't choose.
Oh, 97 has a lot of long albums that are really good.
Yeah, I mean, I have the Ronnie Size record here. Well, this is Represent.
That's a double album.
New Forms. Yeah, it's a double album. Banco de Gallo. If anybody's interested in this music, just write some of these names down. I'm sure Tim will put them in the show notes and links and all that.
I will not. Just to spite
Banco
you.
de Gallo, Big Men Cry. This is like an electronic record that harkens a lot back to Pink Floyd. So if anybody is into that kind of Pink Floydish ambient, look for Banco de Gallo, Big Men Cry. Groove Rider is a very wonderful record, much more bigger drums than what you hear on this. I think C-Tech was that one of Ian's picks?
We've reviewed C-Tech. Yes,
There
sir.
it is.
That came out this year. It came out in 97. Now, Mice Parade, this guy is a drummer by trade, plays guitar as well. He plays all over the place. Like his music is all over the place, and it's mostly live. Some of the stuff you'll hear on the CDs is programmed, but if you ever see this guy, his name is Adam Pierce, but he mixed up the letters in his name to make Mice Parade. His debut record. Tricky came out with some really good stuff around this time. I know Tim, he might be a fan of that, right?
Tricky. Love Tricky.
But Max and Quay, and then the next record that came out, which was what, New Deal or Big Deal or whatever that was.
The first one was Max and Quay. The second one was Pre-Millennium Tension.
Okay, but the one in between those two, the EP thing. Oh, I think it was a full album.
No, he did an album as Nearly God.
Nearly God, that's it. Nearly God.
Yeah.
Wonderful record.
Mm-hmm.
This is a pure techno ambient guy, Tetsuya Nui. World Receiver came out that year. He's got so many cool albums of the era, but that 1997 in particular. Fila Brasilia was a band, a duo out of England.
Jay and I are familiar, right, Jay?
Really? Fila Brasilia?
You know why?
No.
They remixed 2 songs on the debut Twilight Singers album.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, cool. Ben Neal, Goldbug. Look this one up. This record has DJ Spooky on it. It has Paige Hamilton on it on 2 or 3 tracks. It's drum and bass, but it is jazzy and it's all over the place. Really cool. Ronnie and Clyde is kind of a more of an obscure thing, but really smooth, kind of like Squarepusher. Even smoother than Squarepusher. Plug. And Plug is kind of hard to find as well, which I don't know why. I think they were on Trent Reznor's label. I don't have, Nothing Records. I'm looking at 1997. It's hard to find. Yeah, I don't even think it's streaming. Why? Trent, why?
He's busy making soundtracks for
DJ Shadow, of course, had Introducing, but he had some really cool stuff this year. Nomad is an Australian band that incorporates didgeridoo with drum and bass and electronica.
Didgeridoo.
So very interesting. And then my favorite, which I almost picked for this podcast, Rest Proof Clockwork by the electronic artist Plaid. Now, this record, I think, is, what's the max number of minutes you can have on a CD?
On a CD, I believe it's 78.
I think it's 79 minutes. So I didn't want to pick that, but it's really cool, and it has
Google,
some
what's the
really
maximum
cool,
you can put on a
really cool ambient stuff on there, mixed in with a little bit of soft drum and bass, and a little bit more like Squarepusher than other stuff. So I wanted to throw that in there real quick. But those are the ones I didn't pick. Definitely, if you're into any of this stuff, take my word for it. They're at least worth a listen to see where you fall into the spectrum of all of that.
Just for the record, a CD can hold up to 79 minutes and 59 seconds of audio, but it is generally recommended to stay under 74 minutes for compatibility and to ensure the last song plays fully. So there you go. You can, using a CD burner, overburn a disc to 81 minutes, but it doesn't guarantee it will be fully playable in all players.
Yeah, my first CD player wouldn't play CDs over like 60 minutes. It wouldn't be able to play the first track, which is weird, but
odd.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else? Is there anything you want to cover? Doesn't work?
Me? No.
Yes, you. Okay. You're the only other one that besides me and Jay. So
and Ian.
And Ian, yes. All right. So let's get to our overall ratings on this then. I'll share the poll results from Patreon in a moment, but Hard Normal Daddy by Squarepusher, is it a worthy album, a better EP, or a decent single? Jay, where do you land?
I'm in an EP. So I'd go with Beep Street, Papalon, E8 Boogie, and Fat Controller. And that's still just about 30 minutes, which I think for me is just about the max I can process of this style. I appreciate what it is, but an album is just too much for me. So better EP. Where you at, Tim?
I bet a worthy album. I would just drop a couple songs, and I know we're not going to get to vinyl length, but I mean, I really enjoy this style. I've, as I mentioned with Ronnie Size and Aphex Twin, so getting into a full album by Squarepusher was fun. I was actually even broke it out at dinner because we were listening to I will throw a record on at dinner. I'll pick something random. So I picked a Charlie Parker record that we were listening to, and Katie and Nina were like, jazz, like while we're listening to it. I'm like, if you want to hear some weird jazz, and I pull my phone out and I start playing this, and they're all like, doing weird dance movements and stuff to it. So this made it to the dinner table, is what I'm saying. This was the topic of conversation this week at the dinner table, which I think it should be the topic of conversations at more dinner tables across America. Squarepusher, are you talking to your children about Squarepusher? I hope so.
Sit them down
and have a heart-to-heart. Now, where the album for me? Patrick, what saith you?
I'm giving it a worthy album. I would, for the sake of popularity and crowd pleasing and all that, I would cut a couple of songs, but not that I don't like them. I think Rustic River is the first track 3 is kind of the only real drum and bass song on this record, like where it's really focused on kind of what the middle of drum and bass was doing in the era. So it's a wonderful song.
It's got that Donald Duck bass part though.
Yeah,
I don't love that bass
sound. And that's kind of where a lot of drum and bass fell out of favor pretty quickly. This genre died quick. And it took a long time, 20 some years, for it to come back as hey, wait, maybe there's some good stuff in there. I really like the kind of the air organ that came after that though. And that song, what was it called? Aerog D9. I might, and just for brevity, I would probably cut the P's and G's song number 11 and Rebus. I don't want to cut Rebus because I love it. But the really next the next EP, they got vocals on the next EP.
What?
Yeah. And it's wonderful. It's really good, but it's a little bit less of that jazz bass that you hear all throughout this album. So I think that's where I would stand. I would think I would maybe cut 3 songs just to go along with the masses who want, that have short attention spans.
Sorry about the dog barking. Someone just came up to our door. I don't know who
I thought
it is.
that was Pink Floyd Animals album.
But okay.
Oh, I can barely hear it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, the folks at Patreon, 50% worthy album, 25% better EP, 25% decent single. I don't know what single you're pulling off of this. I'm guessing they just didn't like the record, or I maybe you have 2 songs that you like. It's an A and a B, but 50% worthy album.
Interesting.
The correct answer this week. Sorry, Jay.
Cool.
You had the incorrect answer. You will be relegated down to the Premier League.
It happens from time to time.
That's all right. That's okay.
Let me throw one more thing out there. Maybe you guys agree on this or not, but this track 10 is called Male Pill. I think that song kind of, and maybe your notes say this, maybe they don't, kind of pulled the whole album together. Like, it kind of took what was great about all of the songs, and and that's like the song. Like, if you want to know what Hard Normal Daddy sounds like, if you throw on just stop smiling.
What's that name?
Throw on Male Pill
Daddy
and throw on Male Pill, and then you will know a lot about what the record is. I think it just feels like that one kind of a cap.
So Male Pill makes Hard Normal Daddy.
It totally makes it. It's just what Hard Normal Daddy needed. It was a male pill.
Cheers.
And on that note,
cheers, everybody. Cheers. Patrick, thank you for bringing this to us. The electronic end of the 90s is something we're still dipping our toes in. Much of it thanks to you and to Ian and to Josh Ballard, who has gotten us a number of records, and to a number of folks out there who have brought electronic records to us over the years. We're dipping our toes every once in a while, and sometimes we find things we like this. So cool. Thank you. And I look forward to whatever the next pick is, because you always bring us something interesting and different every year. That I literally have no idea what you're going to pick from year to year. There's some people I'm like, I kind of guess that this is going to have guitars in it. I don't even know that yours is going to have guitars. I don't know what's going to happen.
I've got a short list already, and I do have an album that I've been wanting to do this whole. You guys have been doing this a long time. Hey, this is my pitch for all those listeners out there. These guys have been doing this for a long time, and they're doing a great job at it. They are dedicated to this. You should reward them. If you like what you hear, please support this podcast. Do all the things. Now they got all kinds of fingers in all these other social media things now, and Tim's going to tell you about that in a minute.
We do.
But I'm just saying, if you hear something on here that you like, they are going to do that again. They're going to give you more things that you like. So
we're people pleasers.
It's time to just help them out, keep this thing going, because who knows how long they can put up with, whatever it takes to do this every single week.
Tim's getting shut down as we speak.
I'm literally
That's right. There's a countdown.
I'm 4 minutes over in the red right now, and I'm gonna get in trouble.
All right, go and support these two guys.
Thank you, Patrick.
They're doing such a great
very kind
job.
of you. Thank you so much. Do what he says. That's what I'll say. You can join us at digmeoutpodcast.com to explore our free archive of over 800 episodes, history of the band posts, and weekly new release roundups. If you want more, hey, paid subscribers unlock bonus podcast episodes covering the 70s, 80s, and aughts rock we talk about, new release reviews, and access to our so private Discord community. It's where you'll talk about Hard Normal Daddy in our private community. This is such a weird episode. That's digmeoutpodcast.com. And while you're there, suggest an album you think deserves to be featured on an episode of Dig Me Out. For Jay, I'm Tim. We're out, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Dig Me Out.